Because what would make me super sad is if someone came in, worked a year, had a bad experience or an average experience, and then decided, look, this isn't for me, I'm going to go and work and join the police force. And that, I think, is actually something we should care about and should be a loss.
Hi and welcome to Hospitality Huddles. I'm Scott Turner, and each episode will be uncovering the industry's biggest challenges and serving up the solutions to help overcome them. We're bringing together some of the best thought leaders in the industry and finding some of the most creative minds shaping the future of hospitality from all around the world. They're going to share insights tackling the pain points operators just like you face every day. Hospitality Huddles is more than a podcast, it's a community of passionate individuals who appreciate the art and science of hospitality and want to help answer the difficult questions. If you like the show, one of the best ways to support us is to hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It's only going to take a couple of minutes and it really does make the difference. So let's get on with today's episode, and all that's left to say is welcome to Hospitality Huddles, where hospitality meets conversation, one huddle at a time.
And good evening and welcome to Hospitality Huddles. Today's subject, how to retain your people, is it an art or a science? And I'm really happy to have some great people-orientated panelists with me today. So Michelle Moreno, kicking off with you first. If you could tell us who you are and a bit more about you and what you do, that'd be great.
Hello, thank you for having me, Scott. My name is Michelle Moreno and I am founder of QAB Leadership, and I am trying to help leaders to be able to be the best they can be so we can maximize hospitality businesses, performance, and make it very enjoyable for people to be part of.
Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt from Yuda. I'm the founder of Yuda. Yuda is a people experience platform for hospitality businesses. We're trying to do all sorts of fancy things with AI to improve both the experience for frontline employees, but also to improve the productivity of people teams and the data they've got to make decisions.
Awesome. And finally, Ellie.
Hopefully, last but not least, I'm Ellie. I lead the people team here at White Rabbit Projects. We're a hospitality incubator, so we identify up-and-coming cool hospitality brands, and we give them the sort of framework and structure that they need to be able to grow their business. So for the people behind restaurants like Lena Stores, Cricket, Island Pokey, and some lovely restaurants in hotels.
Definitely some lovely restaurants. Really good to have everyone with us, and we're going to kick off today's session with probably the best question we're probably going to ask. Why do we care so much about retention? It's something everyone seems to be talking about, but why is it so important? Ellie, I'm going to come straight to you on this one as the person dealing with people every single day in your business.
Well, I am going to throw a curveball in there and actually sort of question whether or not is retention as we know it. So in terms of the way that we measure retention, which is almost, how many people did you have at the beginning of the period and how many of those people have left in that period? Is that even important at all? In the world that we live in, where there's loads of gig jobs, people can get onboarded to Uber or Deliveroo and then pick and choose to work when they want or move to different platforms or kind of do what they want when they want. I think the way that potentially we measure retention is wrong, and I'm kind of not 100% sure if it matters actually that much. Now, I'm sure Matt and Michelle, you're smiling away at me already, so you completely disagree with what I say. But I think something that I believe is really important is if someone joins because they want to save up to go traveling in 3 months or 4 months, and they stay with you for that full 3 or 4 months. That's retention. That's important, but that would actually mess up the original figure that I said that we track as a business. So I know, Matt, it's a figure that you measure on Yuda. What do you think about the actual figure of retention?
I actually think you're right, Ellie. I think in the people space, I think when people gravitate to one metric as being like the most important metric, it usually has negative consequences. And for me, I think you need the data that enables you to distinguish between, if you like, different kinds of retention. Like you say, like someone who comes and works for you for 3 months between jobs or between traveling or while studying, I think you can, in hospitality, you can give that person an amazing experience. You can get great value for them in 3 months. They can leave like a brand ambassador for your company. You know, that's not a bad lever. Similarly, someone who, you know, stays for you for 3 years and then moves on to a bigger role somewhere else, or a new, again, that doesn't seem to me to be a negative lever. I think the ones that people are concerned about are people who are leaving before they intended to leave. You know, like 90-day turnover, I think is still pretty high when you look across the industry, and I suggest there are more people leaving, if you like, within the first 3 months than actually intend to, which probably is a sign of a bad experience. Or people who you've got a general manager who's been with you a year, you think they're great, and they're leaving to do an equivalent job somewhere else. That's probably it's probably telling you something different about the business. So you're absolutely right. I think there's more than one type of retention for me, and you need to be able to split that out in your data. And it's only one measure. Like you say, if you've got a great speed to effectiveness on your new hires, and your cost of acquiring new candidates is quite low, you can actually afford to have a fair churn of people within your teams.
Yeah.
So I think it's about trying to, as I say, not gravitate to one measure. And for retention, I think it's not one thing. I think you're actually interested in the different experience of different people.
Definitely. I think what you said there about like timed productivity, that is super key, because it's not like we're teaching people to code. We might be teaching people to make a selection of drinks, let's say, and to, use your different EPOS system. But actually, your timed productivity might be way quicker than if you needed to onboard someone into like a tech environment, for example. I think one of the things that I think is actually really important is not necessarily retention within a company. And what we should really care about is retention within the industry. Because what would make me super sad is if someone came in, worked a year, had a bad experience or an average experience, and then decided, look, this isn't for me, I'm going to go and join the police force. And that, I think, is actually something we should care about and should be a loss. If we had a team member that had a good experience, worked for us for a year, maybe we would have liked them to stay a bit longer, but they've gone on to try another style of service or a different type of cuisine that will help, open their breadth of knowledge, but they're still staying in the industry, I kind of don't mind as much.
Yeah.
And I think that, the industry works in quite a swings and roundabouts place. It might be that they go and join another company after they've been with us for a year, but we might gain someone from that company, and we're actually sharing a pool of knowledge and of team members. And I think that's really, really key.
But Michelle, I guess on this one then is if we're in an industry where we have part-time labour and we have casual labour, with people like Brigade, Stint, and people like that, now you've almost got freelance labour as well. Is retention the best means of measurement based on that some of these people are actually coming into the industry as part-time without a desire to stay there, and they're going to go out at the other side? Is retention therefore flawed as a measurement because of that theory as well? What would you say from that perspective?
Look, we all agree it's complex. Yeah, it's not as simple as one measurement's going to give us the answer. And yes, of course, we do have dynamic teams that are moving in and out and wanting different stages. Where I'd say caution is at this moment in time, we already don't value enough retention to understand the impact that can have on a business. So if we start looking at other models as well, when we haven't cemented something that possibly could help us move forward, I think we've just got to understand that there is a value to it, and it needs to be developed further into what it might look like. So I do believe it's needed, because if we don't have that to start with, we're already on an even ground with this. This isn't being used, it isn't measured on a P&L regularly at the moment, where it would change things if it did. And then if it was, we would be able to then get complex about it. So I feel that though it could be developed and deepened, I don't know whether we're mature enough as an industry with the data we have and how we're already using it to develop it at this moment in time.
And I guess, Ellie, I was with Chris Hall last week from the Burnt Chef project, and we were talking about turnover and retention and what have you. And if throughout some of the industry stats in terms of turnover being above 100%, so 120, 130%, probably on average what you see. If you then go and budget to say we want to beat that turnover, so we want to do 110%, you're almost saying, well, we know we're going to turn people over. So does that make retention the most conceivable measurement being the thing that guides the business? Or is it that we're comfortable that people will turn over for the reason people might go to other businesses, you might get people in from other businesses, they might go to other careers. And I guess this is where I was pushing with the first question of why care, because are some of those measurements actually not great indicators of how we look after people?
I think there's two sides to this. So number one is we obviously all really care loads. And, having a team that you're constantly having to train is at a detriment of the team that are still there. And it's also rubbish for people like me because you're not doing any of the cool, bigger stuff where you could actually move the needle and make everyone's life so much better and do some cool people initiatives because we're constantly rehiring, re-onboarding, doing exit interviews. And you're kind of stuck down in this like weeds area when you can't focus on like the bigger stuff that you might want to do. So 100%, we should not settle for retention of 130. But within that 130, I think as an industry, or even as, dealing with other people within businesses, people need to get a bit more granular and say, total turnover might be 130%, but within that, management turnover is X. Because that's when okay, I've got a real problem here, if your managers are going quickly. Our casual turnover, or our team member turnover for people that are coming to do short stints with us is X. And then our sort of, part-timers that are the real backbone of the company, the turnover of that is, and just segment it a bit more to give a bit of a bigger picture. Because what you might have is just a company that relies on people that come in and do 3-month shifts, and that will really inflate your figures. And that's when I think people focus solely on retention and it blinkers them and they don't look at anything else in the business, when actually we've got to be uncomfortable with the uncomfortable and know that we're in an industry that pre-summer, you're going to have to onboard a load of people that are probably going to leave you in September. And the same when it goes into Christmas. That is the nature of a really seasonal business. And it will happen in retail, it will happen in hospitality, it will happen in lots of different industries. And I think that's where I'm saying, like, do we care about it? Do we not care about it? We obviously all care. But I think we can sometimes take the blanket figure of retention with a bit of pinch of salt.
So sometimes as an industry, we get caught up doing things and in what's the cool thing of this time. And back to what you're saying there is maybe the overall measurement of retention is potentially a hype word. And actually, if you go down into the granular detail, it can be quite useful and it can be quite important by segmenting down. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. But Michelle, the new generation, let's touch on that for a bit. And I hate using this because I think it's becoming used quite a bit. But what are the big shifts that you're seeing in the current workforce, and how do we have to adapt to work with them?
Do you know what? Twice this week, I've had meetings with high up people talking about how they want to raise standards, and with all good intentions. And they're talking about it like romanticizing the past of how it used to work and not looking at it from what does somebody who is this 21-year-old, how do they understand? How do they learn? How do they communicate? So like printing out of old manuals, they don't understand that. They don't understand pick up a book. They understand I'm on my phone and how is that information going to be passed on to me? And so I don't even, the generational shift is that's just life. It's wonderful. We all move on and everything develops, and thank you that it does do that. I think it's understanding that the generations together need to have a conversation to understand how that works. It's back to that listening piece that we talk about, Scott, lots. And it's not so much, it's understanding that if we have a conversation to understand how they live their life, then we can understand of the wisdom and the knowledge we have that we want to share with them, how can we bite-size that and chunk it down into a communication and a format that they're used to, that they're comfortable with, and that won't be so hard for them to make the leap into our world, and that it's actually the people with a bit more experience and maturity making a leap into their world.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And Ellie, from kind of frontline, the troops, how are you seeing that shift change? And what have you had to change in what you're doing at White Rabbit, if anything, to the new generation?
I think one of the things that sort of like I've really noticed, and I think it's massively for the better, is the like younger workforce tend to be like a bit more thoughtful. They've got way better, the desires and approaches to work. There's a massive shift to wanting a better work-life balance. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. But I think one of the things that is really great is that a lot of people tend to kind of want to be quite mission focused. They really want to get behind the place that they work and really feel like the values of the company are aligned with their own, and really like where they're working has got good morals. So you see a lot of companies now offering things like work paid charity days, or kind of charity events, like cricket, for example, do a charity event and everyone like the team rushes to be part of it because they really want to be. And I think that's great. Like, I mean, God, how nice would it be if like as time went on, people just got nicer, which is what it seems to be happening now. And I'm totally here for it.
100%. I think that's one of the things that we've lost from COVID in some respects, is like that care and how everyone just pulled together to kind of make it better, isn't it, as well? But how, I guess the next thing is, and we spoke the other day when we met before this, is about how we were I watched you on a panel with Michelle Davis, and you talked about using Juno to help personalize employee experience. Like, what was the thought process behind that, and how can you truly personalize an employee's experience, or do you have to kind of broaden it in some respects and find ways to attract people?
I definitely think that, in a post-COVID world, if you think about it, everything was taken away from us. You couldn't choose when you went out, what you did, how many friends you saw. Our lives were really, really restricted. So I think everyone is just craving a bit of choice and flexibility in their life. And we see it not only through things like benefits, but, wanting to choose when and where they work. Which links back into this retention thing, which is why I'm like, maybe it's a little bit of an archaic metric, because people do want to, work for 3 months, then go traveling for 3 months, or, work somewhere for a year, get lots of experience in one cuisine, then work somewhere else and get experience in a different cuisine or service type. So I think as an employer, it's to be as flexible as you possibly can. Understand that gone are the days where someone signs a contract for 40 hours. People want to, work 20 hours. And that's the beauty of kind of the industry that we're in. We can offer people shifts in the evening outside of their studying or art or time for themselves or time for their family. So be flexible with things like hours and the work that you give people. And with that kind of the thought process behind Juno, it was understanding that like one size doesn't fit all, and giving people platforms or utilizing tech for people to decide how they want to, spend the money that you might dedicate for well-being. Or even this year for Christmas, we've basically done a choice of 5 different Christmas presents, and people just sign up to the name that they want. They sign their name up to what they want, and then we'll get that sorted, because our team is really diverse and we can't do something that is right for everyone all the time. So we kind of need to let them have a choice to tell us what's good for them.
I guess this leads in nice to you, Matt, as well. Like, how easy is it to go even deeper than maybe what Ellie's doing now with the power of data? Is it possible? We talk about how, I was reading Johan Hari, Golden Focus, and he talks about how Google and Facebook and the like probably know you better than you know you. Is there a part to play in all of that with the world of AI, data, and such like?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think if you think about your experience as a consumer, and I think there's a generational thing, like if you've grown up with Apple and Netflix and all those sorts of things, you turn up at work with a certain set of expectations about how stuff should work and flex to you and that sort of thing. And from a consumer perspective, I think there are like two types of companies that know you really well. There's like your landlord of the pub or your hairdresser or like your personal trainer or someone like who knows you very intimately. Or there's Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, who have all the data on you. And what's interesting, I think, from an employee experience perspective is in hospitality, we do the first bit really well, if that makes sense. When you've got a founder with like 3 or 4 sites and they know everyone that works there, know exactly what's going on in their lives, like how to motivate them, all that sort of thing. But we don't have a way of doing it at scale. Once you get past like 10, 12 sites, you turn up and you don't know the people that are working for you anymore. And that's where data's critical for me. Like, unless you've got the systems to be able to capture the stuff that's relevant to people, very difficult to create a meaningful experience for them. Like, if all you know on your system is their name, address, and national insurance number, you can't create a digital experience for them that feels relevant or meaningful. And like, as you say, Scott, that's kind of one of the motivations behind what we're trying to do at UDA is to give you the data that enables you to start to personalize the experience, to make it feel more relevant, to make it feel more responsive, so that you can get those digital experience. When as a consumer, like the thing you want just turns up right at the right time you need it. Like, that's what you need data for. When you can get predictive about who's going to need what, who wants this particular program or this particular offer that we've got. And without that data, you end up in this situation where either you've got to tell everyone everything or no one nothing. And so either you create a really noisy workplace where you're just constantly bombarded with stuff that 90% of it feels irrelevant, or it just becomes really impersonal and detached.
And Michelle, I guess when I was an operator, and I talk a lot about how Tenzo was my superpower, because every single day, every single morning, I knew everything about my sales, everything about my sales mix, waiting on people. I knew what my guest reviews were. Tenzo was bringing it all there. What I only got to see was labor cost from an operator's perspective. So what are we missing in terms of data that can help operators on a day-to-day basis that we can feed? Because a lot of the time I had to rely on HR to give us the retention figures, to give us the figures of how the team are doing in the yearly, annual staff survey, etc. What are those type of things that, when you're speaking with people on the floor, they're asking to be heard more about?
Well, I think it's that thing of people just want to be known as an individual nowadays, and I think the interesting point that Matt was saying, where that tech and data can help us, is we know our teams are overwhelmed. So our teams coming in want us to have an emotional intelligence and psychology level that we might not have. And I also have the responsibility of, I've got my stock takes to do, I've got my rotas to do, I've got my financials to do. So what the teams want is to be seen, is to be heard, and be able to contribute who they are and what they have. And I think the challenge is that we are asking people to be responsible of so much and asking them to deliver as managers and leaders that they don't necessarily have the skills yet to be able to support what is needed. And this is where the tech is interesting, because the tech would be able to, as you've used the word, Matt, previously before to me, to nudge the questions that might go, oh, they've just started university. How's university? Or they've been on holiday. Don't forget to check in to see if they've been on holiday. And they're not asking, they're asking for connection from what I can see. They're asking that they because the teams are larger responsibility, we don't have as much as, if anybody asks any manager, they'll go, I'm too busy. It's too much to do. That's the general weight of an issue for all our leaders. And so what happens if they're too busy and they're dealing with the urgent and the coffee machine broken down to, and a staff member hasn't turned up, what these team members need to feel engaged is to be seen, and that opportunity is being taken away because the leaders are busy trying to, deal with the urgent situation. And I wonder whether this tech element will nudge them to give the emotional intelligence support to the leaders to go, okay, right, I've got 3 minutes. I need to go and ask these questions of these people. And that would settle the team to feel like they are wanted and for them to start building trust. Because the trust isn't because we're trying to be distrustful as an industry. It's because we're overwhelmed. And so we're missing the moments to build the trust, not that we're trying to keep things away from them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think, back to that point about being an operator and seeing how my sales are going, if I'm starting to see sales dip through trends, I can jump on them. As an ops director, as an area manager, I can jump on them. But I guess what isn't there right now, and Ellie, you might be able to correct me on this, there's not those systems in place where I can get scored or I can score as an employee to say this shift was great, this shift wasn't great, things are going well on a regular basis, that can then provide a larger data set that can help operators actively and proactively manage the team on the floor. Does it end up being too late when you suddenly start seeing retention issues? Back to that point of, is retention the right thing? Is it too late by the time you have a retention stat that's plummeting to be able to turn it round?
Yeah, definitely. I think by the time, if you think about it, by the time you've got to look at the retention figures and they're high or the turnovers high, you've kind of missed it and you've got to start back again, which is it, and go in and put that site or whatever into surgery and find out what the root cause of that is. And I think someone's actually written a really good question, like, are there any indicators that can help predict someone wanting to leave the business? And actually, this is something, we don't really have, and I'd love to have more of, because you're right. We only really, if you think about it, most people do engagement surveys like twice a year. You get retention data once they've left, or you get exit interviews once they've left. And most people that are leaving aren't happy. So exit interviews data is never that good in terms of positive light. So really, we don't have that many, indicators to show you if someone might be unhappy. I would say the biggest indicator for me is if anyone ever emails and said, can I have a copy of the employee handbook? Means they're unhappy. Jump on a call with them, arrange a coffee, you can save the situation. That's like my one little nugget of wisdom, if I can give you anything. But I really would love to get to the point where, or it's something we want to roll out to our teams, maybe asking them 2 questions a week. Are you happy at work? Rate that 1 to 5. What did you learn last week? Open box. They've got to write something they learned, because really, isn't that what we want? We just want them to be happy. And, if the sales are there and the ratings from the customers are good and they're happy, then that's great. And if they learned something last week, I genuinely will retire to the Bahamas and I have succeeded, because that's what we want for our teams. So I think we definitely, I'm sure there's other businesses that are way better than us and ask these questions all the time, but it's something that we at White Rabbit really want to strive for, asking these questions more regularly, so it doesn't get to the final moment. Because, if someone wants to leave and looks like they're going to leave, even if you can get them to stay and hold on that little bit longer, that the seed has been planted and it's likely that they will go, and you're just, prolonging a bit of pain or delaying the inevitable there. So if we could, get this information weekly, often, and be able to act on it quickly, I genuinely think it would solve lots of the problems that we have.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I support you all the way as an ex-operator. I think that data is key, isn't it, as well? Not just for the people side of things, but also the people who are speaking to managers and store managers every day. Matt, I don't know if you've ever met Derek, but Derek is huge into data. So this is probably a good one for you as well. Is there a way to predict if someone wants to leave a business, and how do you then turn that into something that an operator who isn't maybe tech savvy can understand it and execute to help?
Okay. There's a danger I get really geeky. Can I get geeky for a second? So yes, there is a way of doing it. It's not as simple as people perhaps approach it. So people management is what I would call a complex adaptive system. So you have these feedback loops in it that mean that basically at the start you can't work out what's going to cause a particular result. So there's nothing that people go, if you did this one thing, you will be able to predict or retain more people. What you need to do is you look at what are the what you let things run, and then you look back, you do the regression analysis of what are the things that correlated with particular outcomes, and then you test that correlation to see whether it's a causal link. And if you're interested in that, where you need to get to is a place, as like Ellie was describing, where you are putting together a much more holistic data perspective on people. So you want what's their feedback, but you also want to know their behavior. So like when they looked at the handbook or not, you also want to know the behavior in context. So like how many doubles have they worked? How many times did they get 2 days off in a row? Are they working on a team that's high or low for team stability, team cohesion? When you do things like organizational network analysis, like are they using the company app to talk to other people, or do they appear to be disengaged from other people? So you build up this like really holistic perspective on the individual, and then that's what gives you the license to like okay, these are the factors that seem to be predicted for this type of individual in this type of context. And that's when you can move the dial from looking at retention to making predictions about flight risk. You know, so and so is rated 3 of their last 5 shifts 1 out of 10. They've worked a double, they haven't had a day off for 2 months. Like there's an 85% chance they're going to give you their notice in the next 24 hours. Like you can get to that perspective. That's like the modeling that sits behind, you know, the recommendation engines on these big tech companies. But the challenge for hospitality at the moment is that you just don't have enough data. To Ellie's point, like Ellie's being humble, like there's like no one is collecting enough feedback from their people. No one's collecting the behavioral data from people, and people have got in their tech stack, they've got all their HR data siloed across that tech stack. So it's very difficult to look at the correlations between the data you've got on your rota and the data you've got on your LMS, for instance, or the data you can take out of your ATS. Until you can pull that back together, you're never going to get predictive.
Derek, straight in there. We should. It'd be good to bring him on. But have you used a team cohesion score? That must have an impact on bench.
It's something we're trying to test with Yuda, and I don't know if anyone's seen Phil Eels and a couple of other people started this thing called the Pineapple Community, and they're quite interested in this concept of team cohesion. If people haven't come across it, like the premise is the more often a team works together, all other things being equal, the better their performance should be. So like, you know, if imagine you had a football team, you got 11 players, if they all play together for the entire season, they ought to perform better than a team where people are constantly getting shifted in and out of that team. I think to that sort of echo back to what Ellie was saying at the start, what I'm interested in is, do you need a certain core of your teams that have high cohesion? And then you can have that, if you like, more transient people coming in and out. Like, do you need, I don't know, 80%? And how does team cohesion map to shift patterns? You know, like, do you need a high level of cohesion on a Friday and Saturday night, but you can get away with a much lower score on a Tuesday? So yeah, it's something we're interested in. And because with Yuda, we can actually see like the actual number of shifts that any two individuals have worked together. We can start to collect that data and look at whether it's got any predictive quality.
Michelle, we just talked about, I've just been at Excel today, and I've been in the Hospitality Tech Expo. And the first thing I said when we came on backstage was, it was overwhelmed. So much stuff going on. There was so much tech. And I even said to Christian at Tenzo, if I'd have walked in here blind as an operator looking to get something, I would have walked out with nothing, because it was easier than trying to engage. Are we ready for it yet? Is the industry ready? Are operators ready to be taking all the data and going, this is how I can make my teams better as area managers. This is how I can improve my retention. This is how I can grow revenues and create better business operations. Like, from what you're seeing, are we ready?
I'm seeing people are flooded, because I think tech is there to support better decisions. It's a support to give us more information to move us forward. And I think companies with best intentions are seeing a problem and trying to find a tech to solve that problem. And then what happens is they end up with many solutions to many problems, but then again, it's complex. So one individual problem impacts everything else. And then not only do I have as the person on the floor, I have a lot of tech that I've got to learn about. And there was a great podcast I listened to years ago that was saying about, it's not digital transformation we have a difficulty with as humans, it's behavioral transformation. Back to, I'm already overwhelmed with the job I need to do. So I think there needs to be an overall view of where is a few issues that we need to solve, and what techs together do we need to look at and get that in place and getting comfortable. And it's going to be a much longer game because we're changing too quickly and it's unsuccessful. And there needs to be more of an evolution process for, I think, the people to be able to feel confident to understand. And we all know of the tech we have, even the ones we've been using for years, like Forth or F&B Shop, we use it to 30% of its capacity of what it can actually do, because the information inputted isn't enough for what we need. So my gut reaction is you're correct. They are flooded, and we have to look at it as an overall and not individual. And I think that's what's happened with the best intention at this moment in time.
Yeah, and Ellie, I guess the other alternative question to that is, when it comes to retention, people, and what data we have, looking at the generation coming through as the digital generation, can we afford not to bring this in? And should we be prioritizing a data set that can focus on how we retain people longer than maybe some other nice to have tech can add value, but maybe it doesn't have as much impact?
Well, I just think, look at like the young workforce and look at how quickly like they pick up everything. Like TikTok wasn't a thing maybe like a year, 18 months ago. Now it's huge. Like one moment they're, using Twitter or X, the next moment like we're using Snapchat, someone's using Instagram. Like it's not like they don't pick up things quickly. So I actually kind of disagree with what you're saying, Michelle, and I'm like, yes, it's flooded, but look at things like football teams. Every moment of their game is analysed by tech, by heart rate monitors on them, by cameras, by all of this stuff to make sure that team is performing in like the most effective way possible. And I actually think, give it a go. Like what I think is more important is, or worse, is that people stress about things loads. They put loads of effort into what's their implementation plan, and then they put it in place. It doesn't work, and they're like, God, we've put so much effort into trying to get this piece of tech to work for us. Like, actually, we don't want to just say, let's live and let die and let it go, because it took ages and it cost us a bit of money. Whereas actually, if you just go in with open arms and think, yeah, let's give it a go. If it doesn't work, you've only wasted a couple of months on it. Try something else. And people will pick it up. And a lot of the tech that's being designed now, they're following the likes of social media so that the way that it's used for the person is really intuitive. So you're swiping left and right, you can double tap on things to like, or, agree with a comment. I actually think now is the time, like, just give it all a go and see what you like.
Matt, I think you were going to add something in as well.
Yeah, the only bit I'd add is to Michelle's point, actually, I think the biggest opportunity for tech right now within hospitality is automation. You go and speak to frontline team members, managers, or heads of people, the amount of work that they are doing that you could automate is astonishing. Like, even simple things like processing contracts, arranging trial shifts, onboarding employees, updating bank account details, all that sort of stuff. You just need to automate it. And you need to give people time back, and that's if you're looking at like what's the first step on the journey, it's using tech to take stuff out, take manual work out. And then the second bit for me is, I think it's really important, particularly in hospitality, that you're using that tech to create moments for human connection, whether that's human connection with customers or human connection with the team members. I think one of the things I'm a bit wary of is when you're not going to get tech that manages your people for you. Does that make sense? Like, I agree with Michelle's point. Like, you want tech that nudges you, that enables you to make a better decision, but it has to have a sensitivity to what you're trying to do in the industry, which is so much of it's driven by that human connection and having time for that. And then I also completely agree with Ellie, which is I think people have got to have a bit more of an experimental mindset on these things. Like, it's okay to try stuff that doesn't work and get rid of it. That's not like you've learned something, you've moved it forward. And it's far better to try 5 or 6 things in a year and only stick with 2 of them than it is to do one thing, over invest in it, and then be in a position where you can't write off the sunk cost. So yeah, I think when no one's going to be able to ignore tech. Like, it's not going to slow down. The pace of change isn't going to decrease. You have to, I think, get to a space where you can start to be a bit more experimental and feel comfortable trying stuff and for a bit, not over investing in it, but trying stuff, see if it delivers you value, and then you can keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think, we spoke on the last issue that with Chris Fletcher, the perfect tech implementation, and one of the big things that came up from there, Matt, was like pilot a site, test one site, make sure you get it right, make sure your people engage in it, and then go to roll it out. What are the things that you see that helps operators implement tech properly and implement tech into a space where I guess it isn't readily available already?
I'm going to say this as someone who's worked for a long time in the people space, and I was like the worst culprit of this. So I say that with that level of humility. Right? I think the people HR space is often a bit guilty of designing stuff in isolation from the business. It's like, we'll tell you we're going to deliver something, or like a new program that's going to do this, and we'll tell you it'll be ready in 6 months, and it actually takes us 9 months. And in that 9 months, we don't talk to users, we don't talk to frontline team, we don't test anything. And so by the time you come to release it, like Ellie was saying, the last thing you want to know is whether it worked or not, because it's your reputation on the line. You don't want to be the person who spent 9 months building something and no one liked it. The sooner you can get stuff in the hands of frontline team members and managers, the better. And the more leeway you can give them to influence how that product works, the better. Like the genius of the iPhone, and we all got an iPhone, and we've all, every person who owns an iPhone has set it up in some way slightly differently to work exactly how they want it to work. You can personalize it, and that's how people expect tech to work now. And I think you need to be picking products and implementing those products in a way that give people that level of autonomy, give the people the scope to, like, if I want to do my messages at 3 a.m. on a Friday morning, it should allow me to do that. If I want to do it as and when they come through, it should allow me to. Does that make sense? Like, allow. In HR, we've got this mentality of like one size fits all. We're going to build it perfectly. Everyone's going to go through the exact same process. It's not how the world works. You have to be able to allow users to shape stuff. You've got to give them autonomy to make the tech fit with how they want to do things.
I think to add on that, Matt, is like, don't be actually afraid to drip feed things. So like, people were used to working on like particularly like apps and like our phone on like version updates.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of almost like doing your own internal releases. Like, what do you actually want from something? Get them using that straight away. And then, once they've nailed that, do like a version release and add a new function, or, add a rule to it if you want to add a rule. Like, I think, trying to like emulate how someone is in like their day-to-day life and how they do things is really important, and kind of getting them a bit comfortable with one aspect and then doing more. But also, like we said, if it's rubbish and everyone hates it, at least you've only given them one thing and worked for like a couple of weeks. Pull it away, try something new.
Like that's where the decision makers are stuck, I think, not necessarily the teams at the bottom. Like, if we've said we're going to invest in something, the responsibility on the person who's had to put it in, the decision makers need to get more. And I totally agree with the experiments and the evolution drip feed of things so that we can behaviorally change with it. And it's getting the decision makers to loosen up, not the teams. The teams are there, they get it, they understand it. It's the people who sign things off and we have to go and justify it to, are the ones that I think are more stuck in the mud.
Mm.
Yeah, Michelle, I think you're right. I think there's still this mentality that the person who signs off the budget knows best. Like they're the, whether that's in the people team or elsewhere, it's like they know the answer. They can design the perfect answer. And I think you're seeing this evolution with people practitioners away from like, I justify my position because of what I know, to I justify my position because I'm really good at facilitating experimentation and allowing this organization to learn really quickly. And it's a really different mentality and a different approach. I do think I think you're seeing a shift on that, I think.
And Ellie, I guess with margins are becoming so much tighter now, aren't they? With food cost inflation, energy prices, and what have you. In terms of making business cases and looking at it, is sometimes I guess. And I'm not saying this is White Rabbit by any means, but certain businesses might look at that and go, well, we can extract the data individually. We can do all of that manually. Why do people need to see this data? Why do people need to use this data? From someone who's driving it from within our own organization, what would you say is the key reasons why this type of thing can be so important?
Well, I think like there was saying time is money. It's honestly, and it's like a full-time job to pull all of this data from all your different sources, drop it into what might be some kind of like, what's the word it was like, something you can actually crunch or like get everything in the same sort of data pattern and then get some kind of meaningful data from it. And also, I like to think of like my team of people as really people centric. I don't really have anyone on the team that's like a data analyst. I would much rather they were great with the team that we have. So if we can make their lives easier and something that might take them X amount of hours, take that away and allow them to go out and have those meaningful connections, I think that the benefits of that are huge. And also, you dig into your retention figures or any other sort of people figures that you might have, like what's your cost of training a new person, what's the cost of hiring, like there's loads of other kind of non-associated costs that you have that perhaps people aren't taking into consideration.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Matt, in terms of segmentation, and Ellie kind of touched on it there earlier, how important is it to look at segmentation of your people? Because, we're working through one of these right now with a client as well, in terms of looking at guest profiles and building guest profiles and making it our Bible of everything we do. How important is it that we go further in detail than just the employee survey, the like you were saying, the right to work and the passport and all the rest of it? What are the benefits of doing it?
I just draw the same argument that you're having in the customer context, right? The reason you're doing that is because you want to create a better experience for your customer, and the more you know what that customer needs, what they expect, and when they expect it, the more you give yourself the chance to respond to it. It's exactly the same on the people side of things. And until you have that data that's giving you some insight into your employee base, you're blind as to what might be relevant to people and whether it's having the impact on people that you want it to. Yeah.
And I guess, Michelle, in terms of that then, and engaging the workforce and getting them to buy into what are the secrets in terms of having this system in place, being able to personalize as much as possible, or allowing them choice, I guess is really what's come out of today, and then engaging them into understanding that there's nothing sinister in it, and it's actually to make their experience better. What are the key tips?
It's a bit of a summary of what's been said. Listening, so that we can understand them and make it relevant to them, so that they get what's the buy-in for them, so they understand it. It's back to, Ellie made a point earlier, it's back to them, and people want to be stretched and people want to learn. People don't not want, even if they're only in it for a 3-month period, you know, we light up when we're engaged. And so if we have a bit of this information, so we can know then what would they like to be, you know, stretched in, so they are learning something that hopefully, as Ellie said earlier, maybe not keeps them with us for now, but maybe they will come back, or maybe they will go somewhere else. And also, I think the other part is somewhere in this information, we want to inspire people to see the excitement of what this industry has to offer. You put up a question, Scott, yesterday on LinkedIn about why work in hospitality. And it went boom, 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 of the joy. And if we have this information that gets them engaged, we have then the more possibility to show them not just the challenges we have in our industry, but the opportunities that this industry offers that you cannot get somewhere else. So I think everybody understanding what they can get out of this information fundamentally will enable us to do them 3 things: listen specifically of what they need to, it's relevant, stretch them so they're learning something that is relevant, and inspire them, that hopefully will mean they get excited by what our industry can offer.
Yeah, and I guess looking to the future, Ellie, what trends, what things are you seeing that are coming into your radar in terms of how the industry is going to change, it's going to move, maybe the workforce? What is it you're seeing now that you're preparing for down the line?
Well, I actually really enjoyed. I was a little think about this over my cup of tea this morning and wrote some notes. And I think like the 3 sort of shifts or trends that you'll start to see is, I think number 1, like employers and hospitality businesses will pull their socks up and be better. You know, people demanding more. And I think that businesses need to be fair, they need to be flexible, they need to be mission driven, they need to be completely people and focused learning, enabled to attract and keep a completely smaller pool of candidates and team members than we ever had before. And I think that is for the good, which I really hope that happens. I don't know if that's me being really optimistic. Links to what we've been saying throughout, but I really believe that there'll be more tech and people will embrace tech to get rid of the boring bit so they can focus on providing amazing experiences for the team and for our guests. And I think we'll also see bit of a side one that we haven't touched on, but a real like resurgence of like apprenticeships, but good ones, and on the job qualifications, because people are now opting, it's got so expensive, aren't opting to maybe go to university when they might have gone before. But we still all love a certificate and a qualification, and people really like to sort of learn at work and feel like they're growing. So I think we will see massive shift to people actually deciding, do you know what, I'm gonna not go to college, or I'm not going to go to university. I'm actually just going to go straight into work, but do it while I'm there. That would be kind of my predictions.
Yeah, that's a really good one at the end. And I think I had a conversation on I think it was Andy Jones's podcast, where I was saying about, do we do enough in the industry to tell people about those skills and those soft skills that we can teach them, because they do learn a lot. I know I certainly did of skills that before I went into hospitality, I'd never have thought were there, but through dealing with it in operations, such I learned. So I think it's one of those where we have to probably be a little bit more buoyant about what we can do and what we can offer, right? We need to show a bit more, I think, as an industry. Michelle, in terms of what sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, in that spirit, I lucky enough to do a bit of work with Honest Burger some time ago, and I remember talking to one of their team members, and at the time they'd made their learning digital and available to everyone. So like management training was available to everyone, not just people who were being promoted from one management level to another. And I remember speaking to a guy who was a med student at Birmingham, and I was chatting about why he liked working for Honest, and he said, I'm learning to, cut up people at Birmingham and all that sort of thing, but I'm learning all my people skills at Honest, like how to deal with difficult people, how to work in a team, all that sort of stuff. And it sort of stuck with me. I'm like really interested in the idea, not just like that the industry does it's a great school for like how to deal with people and the ability to do that, and how we might be able to if you like certify those skills, like Ellie said. So like imagine you left that job and your reference from that organization was able to say, look, we had Ellie, she was with us for 3 months, she happened to be in the top 10% of people with dealing with complaints, or a team said this or this, so that when she turned up to her next job, whether that was as a doctor or an accountant or whatever, she could show the certificate from Birmingham about cutting people up. But she also had this thing that said, look, here's evidence of the skills that she picked up with us in hospitality, so that people can you can really help people capture the value. Does that make sense? Like teaching them how to do it's one thing, but giving them, like Ellie said, the certificate or the badge or the evidence of that skill that they can take somewhere else actually transforms you as an employer, because I'm like, I'm getting more value than I did before from the same experience.
Yeah, we did some work with a guy called Salyers, who was the VP of marketing for Chick-fil-A for I think it was 27 years. And he told a really nice story once of an owner-operator of one of the stores who said, they were talking about why he enjoys his job. And he said, I'm a teacher who masquerades as a fast food operator. So it's very similar to that, right? It's a bit American, it's a bit cheesy, but it's the ethos of it is right. Michelle, over to you. What are you seeing when you're speaking to operators and business owners?
I think it's vocabulary around how we talk about our teams. As Mike, I agree with tech as well, but I think how we used to talk about families, that we know it's a dangerous reference, and then I think we then was talking about it being like sports team and this being elite, and I think we're talking to, we don't necessarily need that. We may need the cool part of the team. So I think the trend is, how do we learn from other industries about how to create dynamics teams, and of that dynamic team, how much do we need that can be the solid foundation of information to create productivity and teach and coach and live the brand and the purpose, but also understanding that there's going to have to be a percentage of that is flexible and that all works well. I think that trend is at very early days, but I'm excited to see how that develops over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. Ellie, we didn't prepare this question earlier, but I just want to ask you something, because today is Mental Health Awareness Day, 10th of October, when we're recording. And last week, as I mentioned, I was talking with Crane. They did a study. The Bedshed Project did a study with a restaurant group, 5 sites, 220 people. Wasn't White Rabbit projects. Just clear everything up. And they found within the organisation, 220 people, 59% of the workforce was struggling with presenteeism. So people were coming to work and they weren't 100% productive because of things going on. What are you doing at Rabbit, or how do you see kind of making mental health awareness and helping people struggle or get or struggle they're having outside of work, inside work, and is that becoming more prevalent now versus previous?
It's definitely becoming more prevalent, and I think it's really about upskilling your managers so that they understand how best to have those conversations with the team members. It's nice to say to someone, oh, you don't quite seem yourself, do you want to talk about it, or should we have a cuppa, that kind of things. And I think if we were having those frequent conversations, not just about mental health, but about someone's performance, about areas of concern, not letting things build up, and really like nipping things in the bud and being more honest and open. And someone I know will love this, but having maybe a bit more fierce conversations often, we would, I think, understand each other better and capture things before maybe they became bigger than they are at the moment. So I would say, ensure that your managers know how to and feel confident having conversations with their team every single day, little and often always, and making sure that everyone's got the right signposts. So almost saying, if you're not able to deal with it, this is who to call, or here's a charity that could support, or here's, all the details of your EAP. It's not all down to you. But one of the things I will add and caveat that too, I think it's also really important that everyone is reminded of what is your employer's, who are they? We're here to care for you. We want to make sure you feel good and well and that you're looked after at work. But I often see that people have really high expectations of their employer, and then they're disappointed when people fall short of those expectations. So I also think people need to be brave to explain, like, okay, this is what we can actually do for you, and this is how we can actually support you. But here's some signposts to other people that can help you. And, do you want to go home? Can we call a friend? Other areas like that is what I think is really important too.
Yeah, for sure. And, I was, again, back to Chris Hall, and I keep shouting him out, but he always says we're not therapists. So it's about making people aware of who to send people to. And as you said, the signposting, the Burnshare Project have a text service and free resource online, the Samaritan's Mind, etc. So it's really important. Michelle, I guess what that brings it to is difficult conversations. And sometimes people won't ask the questions that Ellie's talking about because they're scared of the answer, they're scared of the response. How do people deal with those difficult conversations?
From whose point of view?
From the person, if you're a leader and you're into one of your team who isn't quite there, doesn't seem quite at it, and you're scared of what the response might be. I'm going to give you my notice. I'm feeling unwell. I'm just not feeling okay. How does someone prepare for those conversations?
I think sometimes you have to know, if you can't deal with them, then you need to go and ask somebody in your team who can support you too. Because if you're feeling uneasy with it and the other person's already in a difficult situation, we are a team and we have strengths. And sometimes we ask people who are really good at certain elements to deal with stuff that, even with the best learning skill, it's not their natural strength. And so I think if you feel uncomfortable with it, it's back to what Ali says, it's being brave enough to go, this makes me nervous. Because if you're nervous about it, somebody else is going to be nervous about it. So who in the team do we know is champions of that is a safe space? So is that what you meant in the question?
I did. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Totally. Perfect.
Yeah. I think sometimes we're asking everyone to wear many hats. And that's hard because we're not superhumans.
100%. I'm aware we've come to an hour, so we've gone on. I'm sure we could talk about this for another hour at least, but I just want to give everyone the chance, if they want to ask more questions, they want to just chat through. Matt, what's the best way for people to get hold of you, and where are you on social media, etc.?
I'm on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest place to find me. Matt Grimshaw, UDA, or it's uda.co is the website. I shouldn't be too difficult to find, hopefully.
Hopefully not. Ellie?
I'm on LinkedIn as well, just Ellie Hickling. Again, I'm not very hard to find.
Michelle, over to you.
I'm on LinkedIn daily.
You can't miss her.
You can't miss me. Just mute me if you don't want to. But there's value there. And I'm on QAB Leadership on Instagram as well for a lighter view on stories.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Really enjoyed the chat. And looking forward to seeing what's next when it comes to retention and whether retention is actually the right metrics.
You've been listening to Hospitality Huddles, where hospitality meets conversation one huddle at a time. Hospitality Huddles is brought to you in partnership with Auden Hospitality. Visit the website at www.audenhospitality.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.